They say betrayal comes like lightning sudden, loud, unforgettable. But that night, it came wrapped in lasagna and mismatched wine glasses. We were at my parents' house in Madison, just a regular family dinner, the kind where someone tells the same story they've told a dozen times, and everyone pretends to laugh again. My daughter Lily had just turned 18. She sat beside me, nervous and polite, like always trying not to take up too much space in a room that never really made space for her anyway. I didn't know it then, but that would be the last time I sat at that dining table without knowing what they were capable of. The last time I'd smile at my mother without wondering what else she was hiding. The last time my daughter still believed that kindness always comes back to you. 10 days later, my parents opened an envelope and started screaming. It happened right after dessert. My sister Melissa was still gushing over the homemade tiramisu Mom had made, just like the old days, when Haley, her daughter, tapped a spoon against her wine glass and stood up. The room hushed. I thought she was going to announce she'd gotten engaged again, or maybe accepted into grad school after all that talk about taking a gap year for self-discovery. But no, Haley smiled, eyes gleaming with performance. I just wanted to say, I made an offer on a house. The silence cracked into applause. Melissa gasped like someone had just handed her an Oscar. My mom put a hand over her heart. My dad raised his glass with a proud smirk. And across the table, Lily, me daughter, froze. Haley continued, I couldn't have done it without Grandma and Grandpa. I mean, I still can't believe it. $43,000. Just like that, I actually cried when the wire hit. There it was. The number. The exact number. 43-0. I clapped, barely. I remember murmuring something like, wow, that's really generous. It was generous and shocking, but I didn't feel hurt. Not yet. I wasn't even suspicious. I was still swimming in that weird mix of social autopilot and Pinot Noir. But Lily didn't clap. Her fork lay untouched beside her plate. She sat perfectly still. I glanced over, and her hands were in her lap, clenched tightly, so tight I could see the little moons her fingernails had pressed into her skin. I leaned in. You okay? She nodded, without looking up. Just tired, she said. 15 minutes later, she stood up and said she wasn't feeling well. I offered to drive her home, but she insisted on taking the bus. I need the air, she said, already putting on her coat. I let her go. If I had known what she was about to tell me, I would have run after her. I would have chased that bus halfway across the city. But instead, I stayed. I poured another glass of wine. I helped clear the plates. I laughed at a story I had heard 1,000 times before. An hour later, I came home to find Lily still in her jacket, sitting in the dark, lit only by the kitchen light. Her phone was face down, her shoulders stiff. I sat down across from her. Talk to me, I said gently. She didn't speak for a moment. Then she looked up, eyes red and swollen. I gave Grandma my college fund. Time froze. All of it? I asked, my voice already unraveling. She nodded. $43,000. I wired it to her last week. I couldn't breathe. Not from anger. From the realization that someone had looked into my daughter's heart and decided to take from it. I must have said her name 5 times before the words sank in. Lily, why? Why would you do that? She stared at the grain of the kitchen table like it held the answer. Her voice, when it came, was small. Grandma said she needed surgery, something serious, that she'd been putting it off for years because it wasn't covered by insurance. She said she didn't want anyone to worry. I felt the floor shift under me, not from surprise, but from the weight of how calculated it was. She told me the day I turned 18, Lily added. Said she'd been waiting until I had access to my savings, that it was urgent, that she didn't want to burden anyone else. And she asked you not to tell me, I whispered. Lily nodded, blinking rapidly. She said you had enough on your plate, that if people knew, they'd make it about themselves. I just wanted to help. My chest physically hurt. I reached for her hand, but she didn't move. She wasn't rejecting mesh, just looked ashamed. I wasn't scared, Mom, she said. I didn't do it because she pressured me. I did it because I wanted to do something good. I thought, if this could take away her pain, it was worth it. Then, almost apologetically, she pulled out her phone and showed me the transfer. Sisha-san. Ling. Memo line. For surgery. Hope you're okay. A tiny red heart at the end. I stared at that screen like it might blink away, like maybe I'd misread the number, the message, everything. But no. It was all there, recorded in cold digital ink. You were lied to, I finally said, flat, low. She broke then, not loudly, not dramatically, just tears slipping quietly down her cheeks as she covered her face with her hands. I really thought I was doing something good, she said between sobs. You were, I told her. You just gave it to the wrong person. I held her. For a long time. My arms were there, but my mind wasn't. My thoughts were already moving quiet, sharp, focused. Because I knew my mother. I knew how she could twist a truth until it looked like kindness. But this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was theft, sugar-coated with guilt and family. And the worst part? Lily still wanted to believe the woman who raised me wasn't a liar. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I started planning. That night, after Lily fell asleep still in her hoodie, curled up like a child, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I kept replaying her words, her expression, the quiet heartbreak in her voice. But the more I tried to make sense of it, the more my mind dragged me back through the years, back to all the small, sharp moments I'd buried under the label, family quirks. Because this didn't come out of nowhere. It started when Haley was born. Melissa was just 20, living with my parents, and honestly, I was proud of them back then. They didn't judge her, didn't shame her, they stepped up. Bought baby clothes, read parenting books, transformed into doting grandparents overnight. It was beautiful. I told myself that 100 times. Even when they started calling Haley our second chance, I brushed it off as sentimentality. Even when I brought Lily over for the first time, just 3 weeks old and wrinkled and wide-eyed, and my mom held her for 10 minutes before putting her down with a polite, "She looks tired." I told myself, don't overthink it. I wanted them to bond. I wanted it so badly I ignored the signs. When Haley got a charm bracelet, for being such a bright star, after a school play, Lily got a belated birthday card signed, "Best wishes, Gigi." When Haley said she liked baking, my mom cleared out a drawer and labeled it Haley's baking stuff. Lily once brought over homemade cupcakes scratch-made, even used almond flour. Mom said, "Oh honey, I'm trying to cut back on sugar." They once threw Haley a half-birthday party. Half. With a full cake, decorations, and a 100 bill tucked inside a glittery card. Lily's real birthday, that same year? They called at 8 p.m. Said they forgot what day it was. I still didn't confront them. I still told myself it didn't matter. That Lily didn't notice. That it was just a generational difference. That my parents loved in their own way. But I noticed. I noticed everything. And then came the money. When I got my first job, the calls started. "We're just a little short this month. Can you help with Haley's recital fees?" I said yes, every time. I thought that's what family does. Until I had Lily. Until I became a mother and realized that love, real love, doesn't tally debts in one child's name and spend them on another. Even then, I didn't imagine they'd ever go this far. But now, with the pieces in front of me, it wasn't just a mistake, it was a pattern, a long, quiet erosion of fairness, cloaked in smiles and birthday candles. And now it had cost my daughter her future. I wasn't just angry. I was awake. And I was done pretending. I didn't wait. The next morning, before the sun fully rose over the snow-covered roofs of Madison, I got in my car and drove straight to my parents' house. I didn't tell Graham. I didn't call ahead. I needed to see her face when I asked. The house looked the same as always, neat, serene, carefully curated like everything in my mother's world. But when she opened the door in her bathrobe, mascara still crusted in the corners of her eyes, she blinked at me like I was the one out of place. "Jessica," she said softly, clutching her mug. "Is everything okay?" "You tell me," I replied, stepping inside without waiting for permission. She didn't stop me. She just padded toward the kitchen and switched on the kettle, as if we were about to have a chat about wallpaper samples. I didn't sit. I couldn't. "Did you ask Lily for her college fund?" She turned slightly, but didn't flinch. "She offered it," she said, like it was the most casual thing in the world. "She's a very thoughtful young woman. You raised her well." My jaw clenched. "She gave it to you because you told her you needed surgery." "I never said I had an appointment," she replied. "I said I'd been in pain." "You told her not to tell me. You said it was urgent, private, that you didn't want anyone to worry." She stirred her tea. "She's 18, Jessica. Legally, she can do what she wants." I stepped closer. "So there was no surgery?" She turned finally, slowly. Her eyes met mine for a beat. Then, with a vague shrug, "I might need one someday. I'm not getting younger." I actually laughed. One dry, hollow sound that scraped my throat on the way out. "You lied to an 18-year-old girl, your own granddaughter. You let her drain everything she had of, everything she worked for, because what? You wanted to buy Haley a down payment?" She stiffened. "Don't be dramatic." "Dramatic?" My voice rose slightly. "She gave you 43-0 because she thought you were dying." She held up a hand. "Jessica, you're making this about you." "No," I said, voice suddenly calm, cold. "You made this about you the second you used her love as leverage." Her face hardened. "She'll understand when she's older. One day, she'll see that helping family is never a mistake." "She won't," I said quietly. "Because she didn't help family. She was used by them." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just turned, walked out the door, and didn't look back. When I got home, Lily was still in her pajamas, sitting at the kitchen counter with a mug of cereal, eyes puffy but calm. "Did you talk to her?" she asked. I nodded. "There is no surgery." Lily stared into her spoon for a long time. Then she whispered, "That's what I thought." We didn't speak after that, not for a while. Because when truth finally arrives, it doesn't scream. It just settles. And then it starts to burn. I thought the worst was behind us. After confronting my mother, after peeling back the lie and exposing the rot, I thought we'd at least earn silence. But I was wrong. 4 days later, the whispers started. Not to me, not to Lily. To everyone around us. Aunt Julie sent me a text. "Your mom said Lily gave her a small loan, and now she's suing her over it just for attention? Please tell me that's not true." I stared at the screen for a full minute before I could even breathe. A loan? Attention? Lily had given up her future, and somehow they were turning her into a selfish brat chasing beer money. When I showed the message to Lily, she didn't cry. She didn't even blink. She just went still. That eerie kind of stillness where you can't tell if someone is holding themselves together or already coming apart inside. "They think I did this. For money?" she whispered. My heart fractured again. "They're scared," I said softly. "Scared because the truth makes them look exactly like what they are." We didn't retaliate. Not with insults, not with threats. We responded with proof. I gathered every message, every screenshot. The wire transfer. The memo. For surgery. Hope you're okay. The text from my mother. Please don't tell your mom. It's not covered by insurance. The date Lily's 18th birthday. I didn't add commentary, just facts. I sent them to the relatives who had the decency to ask before judging. A few never replied again. 1 or 2 quietly changed sides. Most, they disappeared. Because people love to whisper, but they hate to choose sides. Melissa, of course, doubled down. When I called her hoping, foolishly, that some sliver of reason might still exist, she cut me off. "Look, I don't know what Mom told you," she said sharply, "but the money was a gift. It's not our fault Lily gave it away. She was lied to, I said, holding back a scream. Manipulated. Don't you think she deserves it back? Melissa snorted. Why would we give it back? Mom gave it to Haley. End of story. Even if it came from a lie? I don't control our mother, she snapped. And neither do you. Then she hung up. I sat there, staring at the deadline on my phone. My fingers trembled not with fear, but with rage too heavy to lift. Later that night, Lily sent a message to Haley. It was short, polite, no accusations. Did you know where the money came from? The reply came almost instantly. Grandma said it was hers to give. That was it. Lily looked at me, eyes tired in a way no 18-year-old should ever look. So that's how it is. It wasn't the loss of the money that crushed her. It was the silence. The way people she loved more than anything, people who watched her grow up, stood by and let it happen. That night, as I tucked her in like I hadn't done since she was a child, she whispered, I don't want to sue Grandma. I know, I said. We'll start with gathering information. That's all. But we both knew. The line had already been crossed. And we weren't going back. The courtroom smelled like cold air and polished wood. We arrived early, too early, but Lily wanted to sit, to breathe, to stop shaking. She wore a navy blazer borrowed from her best friend and clutched her small leather bag like it held the key to her future. Her nails were bitten down, her jaw tight, but her back was straight. She was ready. I wasn't. My hands trembled in my lap as I watched the doors open and my parents walk in like nothing had happened. My mother wore pearls. My father adjusted his tie like he was about to give a speech at a fundraiser. Their lawyer followed behind, slick, gray-haired, charming in the worst kind of way. He smiled at us. That's when I realized they weren't just defending themselves. They were performing, playing the roles of aging parents wronged by an ungrateful generation. The judge called us to order. Opening statements began. Their lawyer framed it as a tragic family misunderstanding. He said Lily had simply been confused, that she had offered the money out of love, and where parents had poisoned her mind after the fact. Then came the pictures. Photos printed from Lily's social media. Her smiling at a friend's birthday, holding a mocktail, wearing a party hat. She doesn't look like a traumatized victim, their lawyer said with a smirk. I almost stood. But the judge cut in sharply. Let's stick to the facts, counselor. And then, it was Lily's turn. She stood slowly. I saw her knees shake, but her voice didn't. She walked to the stand, pulled out her phone and read. Memo. For surgery. Hope you're okay. Then, she looked at the judge, voice steady. My grandmother told me she was in pain, that she didn't have insurance, that she didn't want anyone to know because she didn't want to be a burden. She asked me not to tell my mom, so I didn't. The judge turned to my mother. Was there a scheduled surgery, ma'am? My mother paused too long. No, not scheduled. But I've had symptoms. Have you seen a doctor? She blinked. I don't remember the name. Was there a diagnosis? I didn't want to worry the family. The judge leaned forward. And you accepted 43-0 from your granddaughter without informing her mother? I didn't think she'd want me to refuse, my mother said stiffly. I'm her grandmother. And did you use any of that money for medical expenses? Silence. The courtroom held its breath. Finally, the judge asked, did you or did you not use the funds to contribute to a 43-0 deposit on a home for your other granddaughter, Ms. Haley James? My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. It was a coincidence, she said. The judge stared at her, unreadable. Then he spoke. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Lily Monroe. The defendants are ordered to repay the full 43-0 plus legal fees. It is the court's conclusion that the funds were obtained under false pretenses, through deliberate misrepresentation. My mother gasped like she'd been slapped. My father dropped his head into his hands. Lily? She didn't move, didn't smile, didn't cry. She just sat still, as if afraid the truth might disappear if she exhaled too loudly. As we stood to leave, I heard whispering behind us. It was my mother. She was talking to Haley. "We'll fix this. Just give it back to us for now. We'll repay you after we sell the car." And Haley, bless her, replied loud enough for me to hear, "You told me it was your money. You lied to me too. That's your problem now." Then she walked away. The headlines never came. No reporters outside the courthouse. No viral justice story to be shared and celebrated online. Just silence, which, in its own way, felt heavier. A week after the verdict, my parents' house was listed for sale. A pristine, white colonial with flower boxes and a handcrafted welcome sign. The kind of house that looks like nothing bad could ever happen inside. 2 months later, they were living in a one-bedroom rental on the outskirts of town. The paint peeled, the kitchen had no dishwasher, the neighbors didn't know their names, and I never saw it. I didn't need to. Because justice, in real life, doesn't always look like a slam of a gavel. Sometimes, it looks like paperwork, legal fees, broken routines, an empty voicemail box where family used to be. Erica, sorry, Melissa refused to help them. "I've got my own mortgage," she said when I called, "and I'm not getting dragged into this circus." Haley? She kept her head down. Moved into her new house. Never reached out again. I don't blame her. We never heard a word from my parents either, not directly. But the whispers reached us. My mother told neighbors she was being punished for being too generous. That Lily had turned on her after spending the money on who knows what. One of my mom's old friends even sent me a card, handwritten, elegant cursive. It said, "I hope one day your daughter forgives herself. What a shame to sue over something so trivial." Trivial. As if Lily's future, her trust, her dignity was just pocket change. I didn't respond. I stopped responding to all of it. Instead, I focused on Lily. She was quieter after the trial. Still kind, still thoughtful, but there was a shadow now, a thin veil between her and the world. She double-checked things, read the fine print, asked questions she never would have before. She stopped calling Grandma and Grandpa, erased their numbers, packed up the charm bracelet they gave her when she was 7, and placed it in a drawer she no longer opened. And me? I slept better. Not out of relief, but out of exhaustion. Because fighting for what's right takes everything from you. And when it's over, there's no confetti, just the aching knowledge that it never should have come to this. Sometimes I'd sit on the porch and wonder if I went too far. If I should have tried harder to talk it out. If I should have chosen peace over consequences. But then I'd remember the look on Lily's face when she showed me that memo line. "For surgery. Hope you're okay." And I knew. This wasn't about money. It never was. It was about what we allow in the name of family. What we excuse. What we call love when it's really control. And what it costs to finally say, enough. A year and a half later, Lily is in her second year at the University of Wisconsin, studying psychology. She tells me she wants to understand people, really understand them. Not just their words or their choices, but the quiet, hidden forces that shape them. What makes someone lie? What makes someone betray? What makes someone like my mother, her grandmother, wrap manipulation in warmth and call it love? She's still kind, still soft-spoken, but not naive. She double-checks contracts now. She saves receipts. She asks, "What do you mean by that?" when someone's being vague. She's the same Lily, just sharper, steadier, fireproofed. We haven't spoken to my parents since the trial. Or Melissa. Or Haley. No dramatic blowout. No rage-filled texts. Just nothing. And honestly, that silence is a gift. Because for the first time in decades, there's no pretending, no strained birthdays, no one asking Lily to smile through 1,000 tiny cuts. The quiet used to scare me. I used to fill it with duty calls and forced dinners and manufactured grace. Now, we let it be. There's a new rhythm to our life. Some nights, We make dinner together with the music a little too loud. Other nights, she eats while reading case studies about behavioral theory, and I sit nearby pretending not to tear up as I watch her exist without apology. We built something. From the wreckage. Not perfect, not shiny, but real. And that's more than I ever expected. Sometimes people ask why we didn't just let it go. Why we took it to court. Why we made it a public thing. And I smile. Because here's the truth. We didn't do it for revenge. We did it for closure. For clarity. For the 18-year-old girl who sat in her coat at the kitchen table, clutching a phone screen with a red heart at the end of a lie. And if I had to do it all again, I would. Because when someone teaches your daughter that love can be a transaction, you don't just forgive and forget, you show her loudly, clearly, unapologetically that she matters more than peace at the dinner table. That her future isn't a bargaining chip. That silence isn't strength if it comes at the cost of her self-worth. They took her money, but we reclaimed something far more valuable. Her voice. Her boundaries. Her belief that being good doesn't mean being used. We lost a family, but we gained something cleaner, quieter, stronger. And now, when Lily gets asked to give, she still says yes, but never blindly. Because trust is no longer a default. It's something earned. And that, I've come to learn, is a kind of healing too.